In this lesson, we're going to learn about the control structures, otherwise known as control flow statements. These are structures that allows us to alter the flow of execution of programs. Now, before we go into the details of control structures, I want you to understand that programs typically execute from top to bottom. What this means is that if I have the statement print 1, and I have another print statement, maybe print 5, and I have another one which is print, let's say 7. If I run this program, you can see from the output we'll have 1, 5, and 7. What this means is that the program starts by executing this line, followed by this line, and finally this print 7. So programs execute from top to bottom. Of course, these are comments, they are not executable, so they are not executed. Now, with control structures, we can be able to alter our program in such a way that perhaps this line may execute before this line, or we can get this program to execute when certain conditions are met. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say you want to print hello 2 times. So let's say you have print hello, and you want to execute this statement 3 times, for instance. What this means is that I need to copy this and duplicate it below. This way, if I run it, we have 3 hellos. But imagine you want to have hello displayed like 1 million times. What this means is that you have to copy and paste 1 million times, which is not feasible. But with control structures, we can use just a few lines of code and have our statement execute as many times as we want. And all these are what we're going to be learning in the course of this lesson, which is control structures. So we're going to be starting with the first one, which is conditionals. These are statements that allow us to execute certain statement or certain code based on conditions. Or better still, we can say conditionals are constructs that allow us to execute statements based on certain conditions. Here we have what we call the if statement. We'll have the else statement, and finally we have the elif statement. In some other programming languages, elif is known as else if, but in Python, we call it the elif. Now let's start with the if statement, and this is how it goes. First, you provide the if keyword, followed by a condition. When I say condition, we're talking about a Boolean expression, an expression that evaluates to true or false. So we'll have a condition, then we end the statement using a colon. Then inside of this print statement, we're going to provide statement or code that we want to execute if the condition above is true. Now let me give you a realistic example. Here I have num is equal to, let's say, 5. And we'll have if, then we'll provide a conditional or a Boolean expression. So we can have something like if num is greater than 1. We'll end it with a colon. Then inside the print statement, we'll provide the statements that want to execute if the condition is true. We can have print, and we can say number greater than 1. Now let's run this program, and as you can see, number is greater than 1. So this condition is true, and for the fact that this condition is true, we'll get to execute this statement. So those statements under the if statement are known as code block. For instance, I can have another print here. So let's say print hello, or let's say print done. Then we'll run it. You can see we have done after the number is greater than 1. So this statement and these statements are considered to be code block. These are statements that execute if the condition is true. And one thing you have to keep in mind is that each statement in the code block is indented at the same level. So if you notice, this print statement and the second print statement have the same indentation level. If you try to have one greater than the other, you are going to have a syntax error. So you can see we'll have a syntax error here. But if I put a space before the print, it removes the error. But the standard practice is to use a tab. So let's say mistakenly you started typing your statement the same line with the if. So what you just need to do is to hit the tab key, and this other one should be on the same tab level. This way we can be able to run our program without having any issues. Now let me quickly change this to 0. And let's run the program again. And as you can see, nothing happened. Perhaps you may begin to wonder if the program did not execute or there is something that you did not do very well. But here is the issue. These statements only get to execute if the condition is true. In other words, if the condition is not true, nothing happens. And this brings us to the next construct under the conditionals, which is called the else. So the else statement allows us to execute statements if the condition is not true. And so we're going to have else, then provide a colon. Then inside the else statement, we'll provide the statement to be executed if the condition is not true. And here we can have print. We can have number not greater than 1. Now let's run it. This time around you can see number not greater than 1. And the reason for this is because this condition is false. And because of this, the statements under the else clause get executed. So if I change this to 3, this is going to make this expression to be true. And as such, these statements are going to execute. So we'll have it number greater than 1 and done. Now I'm going to be providing another example. In this case, we're going to be using the if and else statements to determine whether a number is an even number or an odd number. So we're going to have determine if odd or even. Now I can have num is equal to, can just provide any value. So let's have 10. So we have our if statement followed by the condition. And in order to establish whether a number is an even number or an odd number, we use the modulo operator. And so we have num modulo operator 2 is equal to 0. So what this means is that we want to get the remainder when num is divided by 2. That remainder is the modulo. And if the remainder is equal to 0, it means that the number is perfectly divisible by 2, which makes it an even number. So here we're going to write print. This is an even number. Then for the else clause, in case we provide a number that is not even, what do we expect to see when the number is not even? So this is else, and here we're going to have print. This is odd. So let's run it. And as you can see, this is an even number. But if I change it to an odd number, we're going to get this is odd.